Before we start our budget workshop, I believe Sheriff Craig and his staff have a special presentation for us, so we'll go ahead and turn that over to y'all, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Originally, just real quick, we had scheduled a meeting with Clint. I know one of the big issues we've been dealing with in the county, as well as a huge issue is at the high school, dealing with some of the vaping issues. So I reached out to Clint. He's got a product that he was going to come over and demo at our jail today at 1 o'clock to help us with a product that would allow us to hopefully immediately get a positive result on some of these products. Reached out to Dr. Wilson and asked him if he would want to come and sit in and listen to the demo. He explained to me that you guys had a meeting here today and invited us to come over and actually do the presentation so we could all be here at one time. So Clint is with us, and we've got some other guests that wanted to be here as well to find out about this product. So if you would, I'd like to turn it over to Clint so we're not taking up no more time than what we need to. So, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. This will be a responsive thing today. We'll kind of talk and go through some stuff. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here and the time to talk to you guys today. I really appreciate it. So if I refer to you as ladies and gentlemen of the jury or something like that when we're doing the presentation, just laugh with me and we'll get through it. So thank you again for the invite, for putting this together. And I've done this for about 28 years. I've got a quick presentation, just a couple of slides about myself and my company, and then we'll jump right into the product and discuss it. So again, I want to thank you so much for the invitation and allowing me to be here. I like to joke and cut up, so no, there'll probably be some jokes involved in this. My wife has been a first grade school teacher now for 26 years, so I have the utmost respect for you guys that's in education. I remember the first time after we got married, she said, I want you to come to our classroom. We've been married for 26 years as well, and see what I do. So I went to her classroom for a couple hours, and I went home. She came home that evening, and she goes, well, what did you think? And I said, well, all I can tell you, honey, is they could not pay me enough to do your job. So thank you so much for your investment in time and what you do for our children, that's for sure. So I'm with a company called Safeware, and real quick, some of my history is, my degree is in electronics. I graduated from LTI in 1991. After that, I started working in the industry, and it's been about 28 years since I started. My first position within the industry that I serve, industrial hygiene, fire, and law enforcement, was at a company that made gas detection equipment. So I was actually worked in the engineering department and helped fix equipment and help go out to customers and train them on the equipment. So I worked there for about 5 years, and they asked me to go into inside sales. It was a company called Narcotics, who got eventually purchased by Zellweger, who got eventually purchased by Honeywell. Everybody kind of knows Honeywell. Nobody really knows Narcotics. So we got acquired there, and they asked me to go into sales, and I told them they were absolutely insane. I said, so much I was so scared of sales that I asked them to guarantee me that when I failed horribly, that I could come back to my technician job, and made them put that in writing. So, to make a long story short though, it ended up going pretty well, and I ended up working for them and covered 26 states, the whole southern part of the United States. So after about 5 or 6 years, we had our first child, and our second child was on the way, and we decided, my wife and I kind of sat down and talked about where we were going as a family, and decided I probably need to get off the road from Sunday to Saturday. And ever since then, for the last 15, 16 years, I've been in distribution. And so we sell, service, and rent all types of safety instrumentation. We basically look on in 3 different markets. We look at it law enforcement, fire, and industrial. And industrial, we would include education, we would include universities, and I'll talk about something called U.S. communities in just a second. So over the last 28 years of service, I have found that I just don't want to sit across the table and try to sell you something. I'd much rather hear about the challenges that you have, and then I try to offer you solutions to those challenges. Can everybody hear me okay? Am I
Yes.
good enough? Okay. All right. So that really has worked well for myself, and I hope my customers over the last 28 years. And so today we'll talk about a solution for monitoring for unknown powders, gels, and liquids. Here's a couple of my key contacts. The same gentleman who started our business in 1979, his name is Edward Simmons. He still owns our organization. The Southeastern branch, which I'm the director of, is located in Gainesville, Georgia. Our corporate office is out of Atlanta, Maryland, but we have offices as far west as Denver, Colorado, as far south as Orlando. Well, I got to start over now. All over. My name's Clint Anderson. Okay, no, I won't do that to you. As far south as Orlando, Florida, as far north as Philadelphia. We're a little over 100 employees. We have 4 service centers across the United States. We probably have, out of those 100 employees, probably about 30, 35 salespeople. We represent over 1,500 manufacturers that we give service for. So we sell a wide variety of equipment, and today we're going to focus on what's called the BW TacticID, which uses Raman spectrometry, and I'll go over that and what it means and how we can actually monitor for unknown gels and powders again. All right, one thing I am going to bring up before I move into the product is U.S. Communities. Anybody here heard of U.S. Communities before? Great. All right, so we have held a contract with U.S. Communities. It's a nationwide contract for probably 8 years now, and we just got awarded an additional 4 years. What this means is that any nonprofit organization can buy directly from us off our U.S. Communities contract without having to go out to bid, because it's already pre-negotiated national pricing. This is a big deal. So nonprofit, that covers law enforcement, fire department, covers education. So anything that we're talking about here is on our U.S. Communities contract, and we can work with you directly on that. Okay, makes the purchasing process go real easy. So I'm going to go over and switch presentations right quick. No whispering. Tell them no whispering.
Good luck.
All right. Okay, so I stole this presentation from a young lady at BW, so I'm going to give her the props for it, but there's some things that I'll talk about real quick, and some of it I'll pass through, and some of it we'll just focus on. And again, please tell me when I'm starting to get close to running out of time, because I know you have other important business to take care of today too, and I want to be sensitive to that. So the BW TacticID uses Raman spectrometry, and it's mostly used within law enforcement and fire departments, whether it's hazmat teams, rapid response teams, but it can be used in many, many applications, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. So what is Raman spectrometry? So if you look here, you'll see that we send out a laser into a molecule, and what comes out is a unique fingerprint for whatever molecule we're trying to monitor for. Okay? So fingerprint, right? My fingerprint is different than your fingerprint. So is meth compared to cocaine. All right? So we're going to take and we're going to use a laser to ionize that, excite that, if you will, and then we're going to take the fingerprint and we're going to compare it to a library that we have already built in to the instrument. All right? Please ask me questions as we go along. Okay, so why was Cinderella never good at soccer?
She didn't have the shoes for the ball.
Who said the ball? Everybody goes with the shoes. But you're right, she always ran away from the ball.
She's our corny joke
I'm
expert.
All right.
That is my favorite thing to do.
Okay, so remember when I was a first grade school teacher, these were the jokes I get at home
And I
that
taught
she
first
shared.
grade for a long time too.
Oh, God bless your heart, really. Okay, so if you look at the screen now or in front of you, your displays, you will see some fingerprints for different compounds using Raman technology. So what we do is we have a little over 10,000 agents built into our instrument, and it compares the fingerprint that we get out with the fingerprint we have in our libraries. Okay? So then we give you a number. It's called an HCL number or HQL number, and it tells you what percentage of that scan, that fingerprint, is to a known source. So if it comes up and tells me that it's cocaine, and it gives me a 95% HQL, that means that it is a 95% match, fingerprint to fingerprint, for cocaine, for instance. Okay? And I'll show you some more about that as we go through. Okay, so up on the screen now you have some information about the different products from BW Tech. If you look all the way to your far right product, that's the 1064 that we're going to talk about and focus on today. The reason we're talking about the 1064 is that it has a stronger or a more powerful laser than any of the other products. A common problem for Raman is very dark products. So if we are using any kind of gray or dark product, the laser has a hard time creating that footprint. Well, the higher laser we have, the better off we are. So in the TacticID 1064, the 1064 is literally the EV rating on the laser itself. Okay? So it allows us to do many more compounds, even when we're going to try to go through a pill bottle or through some kind of dark container. We're going to be able to create that fingerprint much more efficiently as opposed to a 785. So here's just a few lists of Raman capabilities. And if you look at the list here and you go to the right, you'll see the challenging Raman samples, which again reference the colored or black substances as well as biological substances. And then it lists what Raman cannot see. All right, but now when I hit the next slide, you're going to see 1064. And you will notice now it does not refer to dark substances. Okay, because we now can pick up and we can create fingerprints and compare them to what we have in the library so that we can give you an output of what you're dealing with. And of course, if you're in fire and law enforcement, depending on what compound you're dealing with, is going to what kind of PPE you have to use, what your action plan is. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. All right, so what can we monitor for through Raman? We can do solids, powders, liquids, or gels. Okay, and the way we do some of those is by different adapters that we have. So if I have a liquid, I capture some of the liquid in a vial. I use the liquid adapter on the unit and I drop the vial in. And when I do the sample, it will take less than 1 minute to get a positive fingerprint back. Okay? So with solids, we're either going to have that in a bag or we're going to have that on a desk or on an envelope. And the way we monitor for that is we use our direct laser indicator and we hold it to the substance. Okay, so if we have it in the Ziploc bag or those kind of things, we're going to hold it up and we're going to take that footprint and again in less than 1 minute, I'm going to be able to tell you what that compound is, and then we can talk about action levels and those kind of things. So we talked about liquids and we talked about solids and powders too. Gel is the same thing. We're going to use our direct indicator and we're going to hold it in front of the gel and we'll get the fingerprint, the footprint at that time as well. Okay. So we can detect not only narcotics, but also explosives. So any kind of explosive agent that you might run into, we can also monitor for these. All right? And that's pretty important if you're part of a SWAT team or a law enforcement agency. So it's just going through and mentioning some of the compounds that we can monitor for. I'll give you a second to read it. That's the narcotics. Let me just flip back to the explosives right quick.
Sir, does the database of agents, known agents, is it downloaded into the device? Because new compounds are coming about every day, and especially in what we're using for the liquids and the vaping incidents per se. So is this an item that can be updated regularly, sir?
Yes, so I'm going to answer that question, and I'm so glad you asked it. I think we met before I came in here, and I gave you $5 to ask that question because that's really what sets us apart with this instrument compared to our competition. There is a preloaded library that we put into the instrument that will have your narcotics and also your explosive agents in it. For updates to the library, almost every competitor in the field that uses Raman will charge you for updates. So, and when I say charge you, it may be $300 or $400 for a new library update. Every library update that we do on our Raman unit is totally free. There's no charge for it, okay? So you download it off their website, and then you connect your instrument via USB port, and you download the new library into your instrument. Not only that, is we're one of the few Raman technology instruments that you can actually create your own library. So if I have a compound on the fly, I can take a fingerprint of that compound and I can go in and I can label it on my instrument of what it is. So not only do I have the resource of B&W Tech, but I also can build my own library in the field, okay? Also, there's a 24-hour hotline with B&W Tech, so if you take a scan and it doesn't come up and tell you what it is, you can send that via email to B&W Tech 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they will then analyze it and get back with you in less than an hour and tell you what it is, as long as they can identify it, okay? And then once they identify it, you still have that fingerprint in your instrument. You save it to your library and you put the name in it, and now you've just done a library update for that specific compound that you ran into. So that's very important, and that's what really sets us apart from most of our competition on Raman technology. So, job's done here. Y'all have a good meeting. Thank you very much. Buy a couple of them. All right, so here's the Narcotics Lab Library that we talked about. All right, so we talked about the 1064 and the fact that we have hit a stronger laser in it. We're probably up to about 12,000 in the library now for hazardous and toxic chemicals. And this will show you, after we have taken a sample of what we see, what the screen will show. This will actually can become your probable cause if you're in law enforcement. Because not only do we have the instrument, but the 1064 also has a camera built into it. And you can connect it if you decide to. We have a jetpack that we sell with it, and it has Wi-Fi capability. So it can immediately take a picture, it can take the sample, and you can email it off as your probable cause. And then look at getting warrants or whatever the next stage is for you, okay? If you download the compound via your software that's free with the instrument, then it will also download in PDF format. So now I can actually see the spectral analyzation, and I can also see the compound, the case number, all the different details about that specific compound that I measured. Okay, you see that on your screen now. So here's just a couple of different adapters that I showed you. One thing that I have not talked about is everybody that uses instrumentation typically will ask, well, how do we service it? How do we get it calibrated? Fortunately, on Raman, it either works or it doesn't. There's no adjustment on it. So it comes with what's called a performance validation cap. We go into the menu mode, we choose a performance test, we attach this polystyrene cap into my inlet, and it will give it a certain fingerprint, and it compares that to polystyrene, and if it comes back and matches, it passes the performance validation test. Okay, so that's the only check you have to do. There is not a required or recommended 1 year, send it back to the factory and we do service and those kind of things. Raman, it's either going to work or it's not completely. So one of the things that I probably didn't show you guys yet was the 90-degree angle adapter. I'll show that to you now. So if I have a sample and it's on a desk, or as you can see in the picture here, even if I have a Ziploc bag, I can take this 90-degree angle and I can set it directly onto it, and I can start my sample and I never have to touch it. This will go in two directions. It'll go straight down, or I can remove it and it clicks and locks in place, or I can sample it in this format. Also know on the 1064 you can do remote sampling. So if you have items that you want to remote test, you can actually use an app on your iPhone, and you can start and stop sampling on your 1064, as long as they're both connected to the same Wi-Fi. Okay? Okay, we talked a little bit about the library. Here is a fingerprint. This is what it looks like. So you're going to see some comparisons on the next couple slides of 785 compared to 1064. The first instrument that they came out with, the BW TacticID, had a power of 785. So the blue represents what this sample would look like, fingerprint would look like using a 785. The 1064 is in red, and you can see the fingerprint that it gets on a 1064. So this is an example of colored MDMA pills. Okay. Again, black we're going to have some trouble with, but if we have orange or red or blue, where the 785 would give us some issues, the 1064 cuts right through it. So here just shows spectrum analyzer or analyzing test for different colors of pills that we've tested. This is for synthetic cannabinoids, and again the red represents the 1064, where the blue represents the 785. So if I was using the 785 and got a footprint or fingerprint back like this, it would give me no match found. And then I would do a mixture analysis, and it still may give me no match found. But as you can see, I have a much better fingerprint on the 1064, so I can compare it to the library and come up with exactly what the compound is. Here's psychoactive. I hope I pronounced that right. Is that right? Psychoactive. Thank you. Substance, 1064 versus 785. Antibiotic. A couple of other key features on the instrument is it is rated IP68, so some of you may not have to deal with this very often, but for police and law enforcement, decontamination is something you have to deal with. And if you have to decon the unit, I actually can submerge this instrument for 30 minutes in a decon solution and the instrument still work. So instruments that are not rated at IP65 or higher, you're usually going to have to lock those down. But we're at IP68 on this, which means we can actually submerge it in liquid. Okay? And trust me, if you deal with decontamination, that is a big deal. So you're not having to send it off to somebody to decontaminate and have it sent back to you for $500 for your equipment. Here's some of the system specifications. One thing you probably should know about is that the battery lasts over 4 hours on full charge. A completely exhausted battery will take you less than 3 hours to recharge it. Okay. The battery is located in the bottom of the instrument and the adapter. So if I remove the bottom of the instrument, you can see the battery that's in the holder there. Okay. So for connectivity on this instrument, we actually can do Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, or USB. And there again, you'll see the IP68 rating. All right, one thing we need to know when we use Raman is that we are utilizing a laser that you cannot see. But if this laser, especially a 1064, does hit your retina, it can cause damage. So we typically do send a pair of sunglasses that B&W Tech provides when using this equipment. You don't have to use it at all as long as you know you're not going to point to somebody's eye, right? But do know that we're using a laser here and it can damage your retina. So here's what the 1064 looks like. I have a TacticID GP in front of me because I was not able to obtain a 1064 to come in today. But this is what the 1064 looks like. It's completely touchscreen. Plus, if you're using a very thick glove, or which fire departments and law enforcement a lot of times have to, they can use the buttons down at the bottom of the screen for complete navigation. So you can do everything through touchscreen, or you can do everything through the push buttons. Okay. It just shows the battery and where the camera is located and where the laser is emitted. So again, we can see through different types of packages. This is also used a lot for border control. So as you can imagine, we sometimes have 5-gallon buckets, sometimes we have all kinds of containers that we're trying to monitor and see through. Okay. Here's some of the new features in the 1064. One of the things is that it does have a built-in camera, like we talked about. The 785 did not. It also can store all the data within the instrument on a SD card or on the non-volatile memory, and you can come download it into the software and utilize it there. We can also delete any scans from the instrument. They have really tried in the 1064 to allow you to do everything on the instrument just as if you're using the software. So in the past, you had to always delete previous scans through the software. Now you can delete them directly off the instrument without using the software. This just talks about best practices. When you're scanning a dark substance, one of the things they recommend, and if anybody purchases this, I come in and do a full in-house commission and training on the equipment. But if we're using a very dark compound, we'll usually start the laser at 10% of its power, and we'll take the first sample there. If we do not get a result after that 10%, then we'll typically go to 20, 40, 50, and count them up until we have a result. Okay? So using a lower laser strength keeps us from destroying whatever we're testing. Okay? It just shows how to turn on the ID64. It'll ask you if you want to be an operator or administrator. The administrator default is 999. One of the good things they've also done in the 1064, they allow you to put as many operators as you want to and create unique passwords for them. So you can give 20 people access to the ability to scan, and you can have only 3 people have access to actually change the menu setup. Okay. I know I'm getting close, so I'm going to go quick through this. So here's some of the user levels. It's talking about the administrator and operators. Accessible to the admin level, you'll be able to get in setup, whereas an operator you can't. In setup, we're going to be able to change our laser strength, we're going to be able to change our clock, we're going to be able to go into the setup mode and change many of the parameters of how it does the sampling. The input method, when we go in there, we can choose whether we're going to use the buttons or we're going to use the touch screen. HQ, they call it HQI on this slide. So the HQI is, again, what percentage of the fingerprint matches exactly what we have in our library. So when you're doing a dark substance, they recommend you have it set for at least 70, but most of the time you'll have it set at 85 or even higher for when you're monitoring for unknowns. So that way you're 85 to 90% sure it's crack or cocaine or fentanyl. Performance validation, we've talked about that already. This kind of shows going through it. This is how you perform a scan. You go in, you can either press that button that looks like a sun, or there's one hard key you press. After about, in less than a minute, you'll have a result on it. You can see in this screen that it's showing you the polystyrene there. And also, I hope it shows it here. Yes, so there's 3 different colors that we can get back. A green, which means that it's non-hazardous. A yellow, which means that it's in Schedule 3, 4, or 5. And then we can do red, which is going to get us in Schedule 1 or 2. So if we get a red bounce back, that's where we're going to immediately go into PPE levels. Okay? A yellow's kind of, maybe we're going to have to use PPE, maybe we're not. But when we get a red, immediately, and if it's an explosive, then typically you're going to remove yourself and have your vomiting at that point when you have a red. Once you get a result, if you actually click on the result where it tells you what it has picked up, it'll actually show you the fingerprint that it's taken. And remember, all this is downloadable. Once it has given me a compound, I can even go in and see what the hazards of that compound is on the instrument itself. It's built into the library. So this is like a flammable gas, and if I go in, it's going to show me the flammable spectrum, and it's going to tell me what class it's in and those kind of things. Mixture analysis, we only want to use a mixture analysis. Unfortunately, technology's getting better, and so are the criminals. So they are learning to cut stuff with things that we had never imagined that they would cut drugs with. So if you do not get fingerprint back, you go into what's called mixture analysis. In mixture analysis, it will show you the different compounds it has, and it's more susceptible to picking up that cutting agent. Okay? All right. And this is again about the mixture analysis. We went through and seen that. This is talking about your question, sir, about adding custom libraries on the fly. And this is where we can go in and take that fingerprint and we can name it and automatically update our library. Once you update it, just a point, once you update that library in your instrument, it's always good to connect it to your PC and the software, so you have that backed up as well. You can see all the previous scan data that has not been deleted on the instrument itself, where you used to you'd have to look at the software. Now I can actually go by date and time and view any scan that I have taken and see it, okay? Along with notes and pictures that I've attached to that sample. Then the next couple of slides is just going to show you the software that you can utilize through it. So I'm 35 minutes in. I think I've done okay on time. I hope I have. So I'm going to open it up to any questions that anybody has. If not, I'll tell Judge for 10 minutes, and trust me, I don't know that.
Tell me about the remote scan again.
Who said that? I'm
I
sorry.
did.
Right here.
Oh, okay. The remote scan?
Yeah.
Okay. The remote, when you're talking about,
Using your iPhone.
okay, using your iPhone. So if I'm connected to the same Wi-Fi network, there is an app that it's a free download app from B&W Tech that I put on my iPhone or Android. And then when I take a sample, I can immediately see the results on my phone. I can also see and text and take a picture from that just as well as I can the instrument. I can also control it through my phone to take samples remotely. So if I have it in an area and I want to walk away and take off my PPE gear, then I can do that, and I can sit there on my phone and I can cause it to start and stop the scans. Okay, good question. Anything else?
Yeah. What's the cost?
We're running a special today? No, I'm just kidding. That sounds just like a sales guy, doesn't it? If you buy it today. All right, so I have already sent a quote out. And again, this is using U.S. Communities pricing. So the 1064 with all the adapters, $43,831. $43,831. That's when everybody starts looking at each other like this. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but yeah. So that is the TacticID 1064 with all the sampling attachments.
So my question is, the main reason that that we're looking at it as a school board is because we're having all this trouble with vaping.
Mm-hmm.
The sample, do they actually put the little vape jewel in, or do they have to take the contents out, pour the contents out into it? How does that work?
You would put it into a vial, similar to this, and we would use the adapter that you put the liquid into, and it attaches to our laser, and then that's what you would use.
So you either put the liquid or the actual jewel cartridge itself?
You have to put the compound in something that'll sit within that laser adapter, and so it would have to be a vial.
And it would be able to tell us whether it was a nicotine product or a product that was not a nicotine product?
Yes, and as things are changing, you'll also be able to build a library on new things that comes out right there in the field. And again, if you don't know what you're testing, we can send that to our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline with B&W Tech, and they will tell you exactly what.
Someone else has probably sent it already before.
Yes, yes. They typically have updates to the library maybe 4 times a year that they push one out. But again, since we give you the ability to do that on the fly, then you're able to update it daily, many times as you want to. That's a great question.
How many schools is your product currently in?
I do not know the number of that nationally. I cover Georgia, Alabama, and Southwest Tennessee.
In your region or in the state of Georgia, do you have any idea?
There's probably most of the times what we find is that they're relying on the fire department or they're relying on the law enforcement department to come in and take those samples within the school system. So I have not had a school system, I don't know if this is good or bad to say, but I have not had a school system buy one, but the local fire departments and police departments buy them, and they respond to unknowns. Does that help answer that question? Okay.
After the initial purchase of it, is there a yearly subscription or maintenance? What is the annual cost after the initial purchase?
One great thing about Raman is it's going to either work or not work. So we do not recommend that you send it in every year, every 3 years, or 5 years for maintenance. If you fail the performance validation test, then yes, we recommend it comes back into us because something's wrong with the laser emission. But as far as the upkeep on it, your battery's going to probably give you 3 years on it, and that's what's going to fail first, and then your laser is probably going to give you somewhere between 5 to 10 years. But there is no, like a gas detector, you would say we got to calibrate that per the manufacturer's recommendations once every 6 months. Plus we got electrochemical sensors that's going to fail every 12 to 18 months. So you have to build that budget in for maintenance. That's not true with Raman.
What about the use of software or your system? Is there any more fees to it once we buy the initial cost?
It's a great question. No.
Good answer.
Good
Our
answer.
competition? Yes. Us? No. You have no additional fees for library updates, software updates, firmware updates. All of it is taken care of for the life of the instruments. And I will tell you that's not true for a lot of our competition. Actually, all of our competition.
When the laser doesn't work anymore, that's a replacement part. You don't have to replace the whole unit.
You can't replace it in the field. It does have to be serviced by B&W Tech. We are a service center for them out of Gainesville, Georgia, so that's your closest location. And we can get that taken care of for you. But it is not field replaceable as a sensor and a gas detector would be.
Standard warranty.
1 year. Any other questions? Insults? No. All right, so I got to close out with a joke. Y'all get to choose. Surely, nobody will be offended. So you either get to choose a blonde or a Christian joke. My wife's blonde, by the way. Blonde? Blonde joke. Okay, here we go. All right, so there's this blonde, and she was headed to Toronto from Atlanta, and she got up to cruising altitude, and the stewardess realized that she bought a coach ticket, but she sat in first class. So the stewardess walks up to her, and she goes, "Ma'am, I noticed that you bought a coach seat, but you're sitting in first class. I need you to immediately remove yourself, go back to your assigned seat, and enjoy the rest of your flight." And the lady looked up, she said, "I'm blonde, I'm beautiful, I'm headed to Toronto, and I'm not moving." The stewardess didn't know what to do with it, so she goes back and she starts entering it into her keyboard, and all of a sudden the co-pilot comes out and talks to the stewardess and says, "I hear you're having trouble with the passenger. If you'll pull him out, I'll go take care of it." So she does. Co-pilot walks up and says, "Well, people pay a premium price to enjoy the amenities we offer in first class. It devalues their ticket if you buy a coach ticket and tries to come up and enjoy the offerings that we have." And he says, "So I need you to immediately remove yourself and go back to your assigned seat and enjoy the rest of your stationary flight." She said, "I'm blonde, I'm beautiful, I'm headed to Toronto, and I'm not moving." So the co-pilot walks back up the cockpit, and the pilot goes, "Well, how'd it go?" The co-pilot just sighed, and he said, "All I can tell you is we're going to have to handcuff her, take her off the plane when we get into Toronto because she won't move." The pilot just sighs. He said, "I've been married to a blonde for 20 years. He said, "I'll go take care of this." So he walks back there. He just leans over and whispers something in her ear. She immediately unbuckles and she takes off running back to the coach. She sits down, she buckles in. She's just wringing her hands. Pilot walks back up to the cockpit, and the co-pilot goes, "What did you say to her?" It was simple. I told her first class wouldn't go into Toronto. Thank you so much for your time. I will leave some cards on the podium if that's okay. And if you guys need me for anything at all, please give me a call. I really greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
Sheriff, do you have anything to add, or?
No, sir. We appreciate you. Yeah, it's a crash party today. Get out of your way.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for your gift of such an education.
Go ahead.
Donnie, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
If we decide to purchase this or test a substance and it comes back as like a Schedule I narcotic or a narcotic that would be against the law, would you guys arrest the
We'll
student?
be ready to move forward immediately.
Okay.
And we are looking, what I would like to do in the very near future is work with, preferably Dr. Wilson. I've spoken with the DA's office, we've got a local judge, we've got somebody from the hospital, and a couple from my office, and I've got Jamie was here, but we've got a couple of parents. We put together what we're calling a task force to look at this vape issue. We want to look at a lot of the issues that we've all been faced with. And I know you guys are dealing with it there at the school, but this is an issue that we know is not going away. And we've got a lot of ideas. We've got a grant that I think we're going to be receiving in the very near future to help us with our task force, if you will, on how we can help the victims, and also with some education. We also may have some funding to help with the purchase of some of this equipment. So, I'd like to, kind of come back to the table and work together to see what we can do. But, it's our desire to be able to identify the products that we're seeing at the school. And if it's nicotine, then, we can deal with that. If it's a Schedule I, then let us deal with that immediately, make that arrest, and work with the DA's office and the judges. So not only are we making that arrest immediately, but let's try to get that in front of the judges as quickly as we can. Again, you guys know, ladies know that we're dealing with some of those local gas stations and vape shops, and it's not vapes, it's the Schedule I, and it's the synthetics is the problem. So, we're going to continue staying on top of it on our end. This will be a tool to help us deal with it immediately and help those parents in the event that we have a child, that has issues, hopefully to be able to test that immediately and determine exactly what it is. The problem that we have is when we find that product now and we go to the crime lab, it takes months. And thanks to Christy that was here recently, she's been able to contact our crime lab and get some of those cases pushed forward. We can always do that. But, having a product like this will allow us to, hopefully, and it won't in every case, because as they change that chemical makeup, it's like he said, I think the important thing about this particular product that he's talking to us about is we may have to send it to the lab and get it tested, but then we can get that information put into our library. And the next time we're faced with it, then we'll be able to test it and get that immediate results. But, it's something that, again, we're going to have to stay on top of and figure out a way that we can, continue trying to stay ahead of it.
Just from the health standpoint, child that takes the vape and passes out, to be able to let the hospital know what it is that they've used is huge in helping that child recover.
Absolutely. So when Chris has a child going to the hospital, Shane is able to test that product and say, okay, this is a Schedule I, and this is the chemical makeup. This is what we've identified it as. We're able to immediately allow the hospital to know this is what they're dealing with. So the medical personnel knows. We now know that it is a Schedule I. We can not only deal with it at the school level with SRO, we're notifying our drug task force, our detectives. They can continue that investigation and treat it as a Schedule I investigation and not, well, this is another vape case or it's another, nicotine case. We can put the resources where we need it and when we need it. So I think it's important. So, and again, I believe there is other funding, not just with the school board or, the county, and, if we can collaborate together and kind of pull some funding together, I think, we can work together and hopefully be able to purchase the needed equipment together.
I know that recently there was a safety grant that was approved by the governor. I don't know if he signed the bill yet, but would we be able to use some of that money for the safety grant?
My understanding of the guidelines, yes, we could use that money for this.
And Dr. Wilson, in recent cases, we've actually had components that come back from the vape substances that we've been able to identify through the assistance of the Department of Homeland Security DEA, our Task Force Crime Lab. These are substances that are coming from Southeast and Southwest Asia, Africa, where there is absolutely no regulation. And while each component is by the week becoming more definitively identified, just 2 weeks ago, more components became Schedule 1 drugs. But I feel compelled to advise the board. We still have a child with neurological damage from a vaping incident. Ladies and gentlemen, the death of a child is imminent. It's absolutely imminent. It's coming. And I know for one, as a member of the sheriff's office, I have to stand up and say I did everything I could do. And I would beseech you to at least consider this as an option and a resource for all vested partners.
Absolutely.
I know after we done our raid on the local stores here and took nearly 300 products off the shelf, I had a call from an anonymous source telling me that some of our local kids drove all the way to Gwinnett County to buy the products that they were getting here. So, you know, the products are still out there. And, you know, I'd love to tell you that, and again, we're going to stay on top of it here locally, and we're going to continue working with, you know, those other jurisdictions. But just because we take them off the products or the shelves here in Pickens County, you know, they're still going to be out there. You know, I was able to find those online, so. It's, you know, we just have to keep working together.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate the work that the high school has done and what Chris has done, because it's not been easy. It's been tough. Sometimes we feel like we're fighting to lose a battle, but you know, these guys just keep on, and eventually hopefully we'll make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you.